Usually the like actual average time watched on a YouTube video, depending on the content, is pretty small, anywhere from like 30 seconds to 2.5 minutes. Our average watch time on our virtual farm tours was between 8 and 12 minutes. Now, mind you, that's about half the tour, but holy bananas, that's really long for YouTube.
Holy bananas indeed. What goes through the brains of those who host over 40,000 students on a visit to a dairy farm at one time? Well, for our guest today, it appears to be nothing more than a casual one-on-one stroll through the parlor. But there's a lot happening behind the scenes. We're going to learn how and why a very small team from Syracuse, New York has come to entertain and engage a very large, live, virtual audience from across the country, and what they do to keep it fresh and relevant on today's episode of Shooting the Shift. Hello and welcome to Shooting the Shift, a venture here at Shiftology Communication where our team of marketing and communication professionals take time to reflect, share, and provide insights into what we do every day to help our clients reach more, convince more, and win more. I'm Dan Toland, Director of Virtual Experiences here at Shiftology, and we're happy you've tuned into today's episode titled, Holy Cow! I am joined today by our guests from the American Dairy Association Northeast, Emma Andrew-Swarthout and Kelsey O'Shea. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. I want to start out by just talking about who is American Dairy Association Northeast. We've been working with you for a couple years now, maybe more than a couple. But if you guys could describe your roles and what ADANE is, that would be helpful to get us started.
We are one of the regional checkoff organizations for dairy farmer checkoff in the United States. For dairy checkoff, for every 100 pounds of milk a farmer ships, 10 cents is going to stay locally. For us, that's a 5-state territory. And then 5 cents is going to go national to Dairy Management, Inc. And that's all for milk promotion and programming that helps support dairy farmer image and what it means to consume milk, what that looks like, and the work dairy farmers are doing every day to produce it. I've been here for 9 years and my role looks different every year, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Because for me, I want to stay engaged. I want to stay challenged. I do come from a background in dairy, so I am very passionate about continuing to tell dairy's story. It's something I believe in as a sustainable food source. I think it's a great piece of nutrition to feed your families. So I really believe in that, and that's why I like my work here. I'm on the farmer relations side, so it's really how do we work with farmers to help them share their stories, but also how do we get farmers involved in the programming that we're doing every day. So that looks like a lot of different really cool programs that Kelsey and I get to work on together.
Kelsey, what's your background? What's your role, and how long have you been engaged in it?
So I have been fortunate enough to be working with Emma for the last 3 years, which has been fabulous. Prior to that, my work background was actually in finances, taxes, and lending money. So very different than marketing and consumer trust and confidence, which is basically all I do now. So I focus a lot on educational programs that are reaching kids in schools, that are empowering youth leadership, and also that are involving farmers with consumers directly, whether that be directly live face-to-face or directly virtually connecting them, as we say, in person in the virtual space. Basically, I don't come from a background in dairy at all. I'm the exact opposite upbringing of Emma, which makes us a super powerhouse team where she grew up on a dairy farm every day, living it. And I grew up 10 minutes from the beach in San Diego with no idea what dairy farms were doing most of my youth. I went to Cornell University, was really fortunate to learn a ton about the industry there, meet my husband, who was heir apparent to a dairy farm in New York. We ended up back here on the farm. So now my life every day involves dairy farming. And that's part of my dedication and love for it is a grown passion, I guess, over time in my adult life, but also getting to see my husband do it every day.
That's fantastic. I never knew that about you. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys really are kind of like a dynamic duo going back and forth with each other, always coming up with great ideas. And I think we'll learn that a little bit here as we're having this conversation. But I want to go back probably about 5 years or so ago, Emma. We started a conversation. You kind of reached out about virtual, programming, reaching students, taking the cows to the classroom. So can you go back to about 5 years ago, and what was it that kind of made you reach out, have an interest in this? Did you know what you were looking for? Can you kind of explain to us how
Yeah.
that came about?
So one of the unique things about American Dairy Association Northeast is that we're one of the state and regional organizations who have two powerhouse dairy states in Pennsylvania and New York, but we also have some of the largest metropolitan areas: Philadelphia, New York City, District of Columbia, Pittsburgh, like really big areas, the city of Newark and New Jersey, right? So one of the things we've always struggled with is how do we bring the farm to the classroom in an economical way and sometimes a geographical challenge way, right? Like to bring, even if you have the budget, to bring kids from New York City within the confinements of a school day to a farm in upstate New York, like it involves some magic, I swear to the traffic gods, like to actually make it happen. So back in 2018, my manager at the time was like, let's see how we can do this. Like, what's going to work in the virtual space? Can we make it work? And I was like, yeah, we can make it work. Like, of course. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I'm a millennial. This is like, I should know how to do this. So with that, being that I have a dairy farm background, I do have to give kudos to my dad because I was like, hey, Dad, you're going to like figure this out with me. So what I did is I had two really good dairy farming friends that both owned farms, but they also worked full time as educators, both in ag education and science education. I said, hey, can you like jump on this tour? I'm just gonna like do a 2 classroom tour and like let me know what you think. So that's what I did. It was me, no gimbal, no noise canceling headset, just following my dad around the farm, raw, unedited. I think we recorded that. I kind of want to go back and watch it because it kind of reminds me of those videos you used to make as a kid that you hope nobody watches. Like, thank God I did not grow up in the era of TikTok because I was making dances. No one should see them. They will never receive a Tony Award. So we're just like walking around the farm. Thank goodness my dad has this booming voice, which Dan knows because he was one of our first virtual farm tour hosts. So it worked out. My friends were, provided me feedback. But then in that moment, I said, okay, there's some really good things to this. There's some merit to this. We can make this work. But like, I need some help on the back end. There's a lot that could go logistically wrong if you're reaching thousands of students at once. Like you need backups for your backups to keep people engaged. And that's when I got connected with someone from Pork Checkoff, who at the time was working with Shiftology UDAN on the back end to help host these virtual farm tours. At the time, there really wasn't many dairy organizations, to my knowledge, doing them or doing them in a large enough capacity that I was aware of it. They highly recommended Shiftology, and then now here we are, thousands of students later, multiple farm tours, even changing the format. Like, I mean, the way we looked then is not the way we look now. I mean, I feel like we're aging like fine wine.
The evolution continues. So I would say a big part of us working with Shiftology in general helps keep both of us honest in the most strange and fantastic way. So we kind of go back and forth with this of, oh, this is what we can do. Could we try this? We've seen people do this, which I think has been really awesome. So like Emma pointed out, our first tours had a farmer basically giving a 3-stop tour, I would say, in most cases, as live and continuous as we could keep it, with a tour guide seated at a stationary location with a green screen. Fast forward all the way to today, we have a dual mic system. So the actual tour guide is live on screen with the farmer. We have a dual camera system. So we not only have those cameras, we have cow cam that's able to showcase maybe what the farmer's talking about that we can't necessarily be standing next to for one reason or another, in part because cows are big animals, and Emma is the lovely, beautiful behind the scenes of cow cam being licked to death by all the cows. So, and Shiftology makes that happen to look like a produced TV show of switching cameras side by side. Students are able to put the dots together. And that even comes down to newer technology as Zoom evolved. Now, between each of our sections, we have a full Q&A section for students, a pause and a stop for understanding. So to start from what was a continuous half hour to 45-minute just kind of video segment with the best quality we could absolutely do, to now us both having, you know, the newest iPhone that fills the screen, that's able to do, I mean, borderline 4K video over Zoom, which is just disgusting and wild. But, you know, I went back and even just watched our last year to this year since upping our technology and some of the techniques that you guys have suggested. It's night and day. I mean, it's just so cool to see the progression.
You know, we do evaluations for these type of things. And what we found is the biggest thing is engagement. If you are putting on a program that is highly engaging, that has your students or your audience feeling that they're a part of the program and the questions they ask can help, you know, direct the flow of the program. What we found on those evaluations that we get back are our teachers are very, very forgiving. But even when we do have those hiccups, we do get that type of forgiveness, which is fantastic.
And I can't say enough about, you know, there are plenty of times where we get done on the back end and we go, that was rough. And on the front end, nobody knows. Nobody knows any of that. I mean, you know, I'm watching Emma get mauled by the jerseys in the background, but it looks beautiful from the other side, and she's covered in, you know, licks and cow manure, whatever it may be. Honestly, it's amazing how the partnership works really seamlessly to produce something that gives all the benefits of feeling live without any of the detriments. And I do want to make that really clear. It's like, it absolutely feels live and candid. And like you said, Dan, engaging, like you get to be a part of the conversation driver. But the truth is, on the back end, all the pre-planning is done. I always laugh at this because this is like these people who are like, oh, I love go with the flow things. I love this. And I was like, every good go with the flow event had someone planning it to a T. And that's what this is, right? The front end of it looks beautiful and feels really candid, and the back end of it is exceptionally well planned and executed. So
but not always scripted. I mean, there's a difference between solid planning versus fully scripting something out, right?
Oh yeah. Oh goodness. And Emma and I, just based on the way, I mean, you described us as a dynamic duo. Scripting doesn't work for us. I mean, it just doesn't, it's not how we've ever operated. Full scripting.
We've been fortunate to have farmer hosts that just love to engage in this way and have been phenomenal at it, right? Like, I wouldn't want to script them even if I tried, right? Like, because the way that they have been able to engage virtually with the audience and make them feel like they're there on the farm. The one that always sticks with me, and I'm not trying to be biased, is like our milk house, you know, per guidelines, we have to have the floor painted because it's, you know, we're preparing a food grade product. So it can be slippery. And like, we're going into the milk house and my dad goes, watch your step, it's slippery in here, right? Like, I could have never scripted that, right? And so like, our virtual farm tour hosts are just so good. Like, we've been so fortunate to have dairy farmers that are just phenomenal, like and each one different and unique, which has been really cool, which is why it's still engaging semester after semester, tour after tour.
Absolutely. And that's a huge part of the success rate, is picking these people. I mean, Emma and I joke, we like to pick people that we're comfortable with too. I think back to an example of having Adam Bates, one of our farm tour hosts, he was at college after I was, and I looked at him and I was like, you're going to lay in the sand bedding when we get here and roll around in it and like lay next to a cow to show this. And he's like, I am. And I'm like, yes, you are. And sure enough, we got there and he's laying in the sand and showing kids. And so, you know, those types of relationships and comfort and trust. And obviously, our farmers get a real sense during our run-throughs. It's funny because I know that they're always nervous, right? Before we get there, before we do the run-through, they're like, oh my gosh, I gotta be ready. I gotta like know the questions. They get on with you guys and us and are like, that's it? I just have to talk? I just have to be myself and talk about what I do every day? Like, it never fails. The shock is every farmer is like, oh, well, if that's it, okay. Like, you know, no worries. So, which I think is awesome. I would rather surprise the heck out of them with how easy it is every time.
That's our goal, is to make it easy for everybody when we do these things. You know, there's, like you said, there's a lot involved. Logistics, planning, connectivity, who are we lining up, making sure everything, all these different connections are working right. making sure you have a plan B in place, but also just making sure it all shows and presents well when it's time to go live. I mean, it is a live event. So it's great to hear that, that your farmers are more comfortable than they imagine going through
and
that.
it's funny. I feel like now we've gotten so used to we're just going to go live from afar. And now we have this like level of comfort with the technology and Shiftology's capabilities that I'm like, oh yeah, of course I can do that. Like, that's no big deal.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to back up the train a little bit and go back to those first trips or two that you guys did. Emma, you did a couple with your dad there. The first one that we produced with you had over 2,500 students registered for it. So my question is, did you ever expect that type of response, and had you experienced anything like that? What were your thoughts about the reach that you had?
Yeah, call my expectations low, but for me, I was like, my goal was to just get through it with no major issues, right? So I didn't have like a major expectation for like how many students are actually going to register and tune in. So in my mind, when we reached, thousands of students on the very first tour, I was like, wow, because for me growing up on a farm, and our farm's very pro community engagement, we do school tours each year and we bring 20 kids at a time. And that's a lot. In person, like that's a lot. You're like, okay, this is good management. We can manage 20 at a time. So I put it in terms of like, what if I had 2,500 students at my farm right now? In that 45-minute time slot, what if they were all on my farm and I tried to share the exact same information? No shot. Like that would never have happened. So it really kind of blew me away. And I was like, okay, now we're rolling. Now I have expectations. Now I want all the numbers. You know what I mean? But that first one, we were living in bliss. We were like, this is great.
Mm-hmm. And then Kelsey comes along and the expectations get larger and larger. Oh. So, in 2019, I know you did 7 trips in total with us, and you had over 23,000 students for that coming from all over the place. Things are cooking pretty good, and then boom, COVID.
Yeah. 2020 was a wild year, right? Like nobody's going to disagree with that. Lot to undertake. So now looking back, thank goodness we got the program up and running in 2018. Right? We were ready to go. Mm-hmm. God bless teachers during that time. They were working really hard to shift things virtually very quickly. Yeah. And one thing that we love is that we provide a very happy, easy to use resource. And we don't ever want it to feel like a massive undertaking for educators. So for us at that time, we really felt like, let's take a step back. Educators are really overwhelmed just trying to, reach students right now virtually online. Let's give them time to do that, meet a good flow as we all navigate this situation together. And so we did that in the spring of 2020. But then fall of 2020, we were like, hey, let's get back at it. Now we're ready. Mm-hmm. Teachers are all virtually online. This is going to fit in even better with everything they have going on. And we have even more teachers that maybe weren't as quick to do virtual stuff with their classroom, that now everybody's equipped. Everybody's ready. And that's when we had, 43,000 students at one time on a virtual farm tour, which obviously I think is circumstantial to an extent, right? Like we were in a storm within the pandemic that it kind of perfectly allowed that many folks to join. But I think for me, one of the most impactful comments coming out of that semester of tours were that educators said, thank you for providing a sense of normalcy to our classroom. And we really received a resounding positive feedback from educators on just thank you for having this resource. And so for me, that was the moment I was like, thank goodness we started this in 2018 because we were ready, right? We were ready to take it head on with Shiftology, no questions if we could manage 43,000 students at once. God bless Kelsey. So she came on like in the heat of the pandemic where, nothing's quote unquote normal. And then as we shifted into 2021, it was that moment of like, okay, I'm going to shift the program to Kelsey. I knew she was going to do great, but we had such great success, and I got to grow such a beautiful thing that you were a little sad, but you were kind of happy you were sad about it, right? Because you're like, that means it meant something to me. That means this was impactful. That means I did something really cool that meant a lot to a lot of people, and now I get to watch it grow. Now I get to see what happens. And of course, we collaborate on it still very extensively.
Emma finished out the year of 2020, and then it was mine in 2021. And it was like, hey, we reached 50,000 students in one tour. No pressure, but do it again. I think, obviously, one of our greatest opportunities was continuing to work with Shiftology. The other great opportunity was that in it being shifted to my responsibility, I didn't lose Emma as a key contributor to the program. It was really cool to be able to do that. And I think it gave me the comfort and safety and space of knowing I had Shiftology on the back end to make sure that was always going to happen. You need that sense of security in a program and delivery of something like that in order to think critically and dream big. Because you can't do that if the audio is never working and no one's getting the links and whatever. I think about making a key change each year that changes the experience so kids come back. It feels familiar and comfortable enough that they do come back, but then there's something that keeps them wanting more. So I just wanted to add that in, that's a big part of it, having that safety and security out there to then allow for these really cool opportunities of growth and change. For any other businesses looking at doing these sorts of virtual experiences, don't let cell service be your limiting factor, because Shiftology got creative with us. We did a pre-recording of all of the things happening on the farm, and then we're able to literally green screen in me and the farmer, Sports Center, lower third style, to deliver what is a produced, looks like television or gaming, which, mind you, is what students are used to and how they're used to interacting in the world with watching YouTubes, watching Twitch, watching TikTok. They're very used to this complex visual experience that kind of makes my brain hurt, but I didn't grow up with it. So I respect that that's what they want. So we were able to deliver that this year. And the key part of that is all of a sudden what was a complete barrier to us, AKA a farm having internet or having good Wi-Fi all over the farm, no longer a barrier. No longer a barrier at all. Now I can go to farms that who are great spokespeople, but who I could have never done this with before. So, I think that that's a huge part of it with all of that great structure and outline and security on the back end allows for really cool creativity and growth in the front end, which is just it makes it fun.
and still, regardless of everything, having live engagement be a part of that is still the main key, the main aspect. No matter how we dress it up, how we make it look, how we make it feel, if we're not having that live engagement aspect, it probably wouldn't work as well. So what is it about your virtual program that just makes it work for your audience and for you as an organization?
Students and teachers know and recognize that I am, as a tour guide, literally reading, absorbing their feedback, and the farmer is immediately reacting to it, or we are reacting to live things that they are seeing happen right then, right? Whatever that may be. So I think those two factors are what keep people coming back and not just saying oh, it's a pre-recording of a farm and a cow being milked and this, that, or the other, right? There's new interesting factors each and every time. And I think we try and think critically each year of how can we show a little bit more of the farm that we haven't been able to show before. The new factor mixed with, like you said, the audience engagement factor has really played a great role, I think, in keeping our audience engaged. As far as keeping us engaged as an organization, our goals are always to be hitting the key messages in a subtle yet interesting way. So all I want these students to walk away from these tours knowing is that farmers care about their animals, they care about the land, and that ultimately dairy is a nutrient-dense product. That literally, those are the only three things I need them to know by the end of it. All the rest of the details are just a cool vehicle for those three things. So as long as those are getting across, which again, this is a great format for that, I'm happy as an organization that that my audience is happy and getting those key messages. And we see that through Shiftology's actually post tour reporting, which is a really big part of that. You know, Emma and I are on the farm in the trenches with the farmers doing that delivery side, and then usually making a 4 to 6 hour drive home from wherever that farm is. And if I had to be the one somehow in the car on my MiFi box, developing the form and sending it out to 49,000 registrants and making sure all of that, I mean, there's just not enough hours in the day. So that's the teamwork, dreamwork piece of I'm getting back then excellent feedback that actually shows a shift in attitudes. Because, you know, I mean, I report to farmers. They're very scrupulous business owners. They're going to look at me and say, is this actually affecting my milk sales? Is this changing the hearts and minds of consumers? And if I don't have proof to show that, I mean, registrations are one thing, but to see the attitudes and be able to come back to that and say, yeah, you know, there was a percentage of teachers that filled out this form that came in with, albeit maybe a neutral or somewhat negative view of dairy, but left and walked away with a different perspective. That to me is a slam dunk for the organization.
Yeah, and not only are we like creatively catering the content to our audience, which is the student, we're then also catering our delivery to our other audience, which is the decision maker. It is the teacher. How do we make the accessibility of this resource great for teachers in the things that they have to do in the very high demand careers that they have? And, you know, one of the biggest things is our tours have always been free. There's no cost, never has been, to join our tours, completely free resource. But more than that, it's also listening to the feedback from those educators and saying, we do this for you, so we want to make sure it works for you. You know what I mean? This isn't just completely about us and what we're trying to get out there. So it really is that triad of like what we need to get out there about farming, how we deliver it to the students in a way that's engaging, but we do it in such a way that it's going to be convenient for the teachers.
You've hosted tons of tours, have had tons of people from tons of different areas. We've gone through this pandemic thing where everybody was forced to do virtual. Now we're all coming out of that. People may have Zoom fatigue, but yet we're still hosting these events. Are you finding that there's still value in doing this? Is this changing? Is this going away? What's your take on the future of virtual programming and virtual trips?
I still think there's a ton of value in it. I mean, have we seen maybe registrations not reaching 49,000 for every tour? Absolutely. There is definitely Zoom fatigue out there. What I'm realizing on the back end of this is that, you know, two things. Number one, everything that we're seeing in digital content creation and what I understand of social media and whatnot, it's no longer about virality. It's about the depth of engagement, right? It's about the quality of a connection that you make with the people who show up. The priorities are changing from that respect. And that's definitely a trend that we can get on board with, right? That even if the registrations are maybe a smaller number, the quality of engagement, I want them to be completely virtual farm tour lovers and repeat offenders, repeat registrations, right? That's more important to me now than that big, huge number. Obviously, the live and produced side of it is super duper important to us, and that needs to happen in the first place. We are finding ways, though, to continue to multiply on that value with the replay. Because, you know, Shiftology allows us to push out to Facebook and YouTube, and it's available immediately. We've even seen just investing a small amount of money actually on the back end, utilizing Facebook ads and YouTube ads to actually promote that replay. That's where students live. Like, they don't watch cable television, they watch YouTube. And when we can be out there immediately post live experience, I would love it if they join live, but man, second best is watching the replay. This shocked me because, I mean, for those who don't know a ton about YouTube and video watching, usually the like actual average time watched on a YouTube video, depending on the content, is pretty small, anywhere from like 30 seconds to 2.5 minutes. Our average watch time on our virtual farm tours was between 8 and 12 minutes. Now, mind you, that's about half the tour, but holy bananas, that's really long for YouTube. So I'm really loving the idea that creating the highest quality live experience in the moment is then creating additional value after the fact. That also helps kind of mitigate maybe those who are like, oh, well, you're not reaching 30,000 students every single tour. Well, no, not necessarily live because of time, Zoom fatigue, etc. But if I can make my way back to the front of kids' screens on YouTube at a later time, I will absolutely take that all day long.
Well, I'm now thinking about my nieces and nephews' generation who aren't even quite in school yet. And what they're watching on YouTube is literally no face, just hands playing with toys. Playing with toys. They don't see a person. They don't interact. And so what does that mean for us, right? Like we grew up in a generation where on social media they say, oh, make connection with your audience. Let me see your face. Let me interact with you. But now we're going to have this whole other generation with how they're interacting with content. It's impacting what their parents are buying for them. So then it says to me, okay, what does that look like for the future of our virtual programming? Is it as paramount to have the face, or can we just do the hands and the voice and it's more of a GoPro format of like you're doing the chores on the farm? And so there's just like little things like that Kelsey and I always talk about of like what's the next thing based on how our next generation of viewers are engaging with their friends, their family.
I'm already feeling the nudges and the pushes coming towards us saying, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? But that's why we really enjoy working with you guys, because you push us to be better too. When you come to us and say, hey, we have this, we want to do that, we're like, well, we'll figure out how to best apply it to what we do to help you. So that's awesome. That's awesome. I love hearing that. I'm looking forward to the challenges that you're going to put in front of us going forward. But we thank you for joining us today. And before we leave, are there any other final thoughts you want to provide? And how can listeners learn more about ADANE and your virtual farm trips?
Always hit us at americandairy.com/virtual farm tours. Every time you can sign up at any time during the year to get on our email listserv, so then you will be notified about when our latest and greatest tours are coming out. The rest of our information, we provide a ton of educational information, whether it be for teachers, for health professionals, for dairy farmers, for people who are total foodies. I'm going to direct you to savorrecipes.com, which is amazing for all the dairy food needs. And that includes dairy cocktails. Sounds weird, but trust me, very good. Anyways, so yes, americandairy.com and Savor Recipes are our two kind of parent websites where you can find us. In parting thoughts, I would say for those other agricultural industries, take the jump. Jump in the deep end, do a virtual experience. I know it seems really kind of nerve-wracking and can feel like a lot at first, but rip off the Band-Aid. I mean, I know not everybody loves to just jump right in like Emma, but we're here telling you that there are more people here to support you than you know, including obviously Shiftology, which is a huge support. Whatever ag industry you may be in, virtual is going to be the way to reach a portion of your demographic, whether it's honestly the next generation of consumers or, truth be told, the next generation of farmers. So really that out there. That's my parting gift.
Yeah, I would say, for anybody who's in food production that's listening to this, so farmers, share your story. There's people who care and they're curious. I would say the majority of people care and they're curious. You want to know where their food's coming from, whether that's hosting a virtual farm tour for an organization in your area that does that, or getting on social media. There's just a ton of resources out there now, and it's pretty easy to do.
I will put a little plug out there that we do promote all of your tours and all those other ones that we host for everybody at virtualfarmtrips.com. And typically the spring and fall are very heavy virtual trip seasons. So you'll be able to find American Dairy Association Northeast tours along with a ton of other ones to a variety of farms throughout the country. And we'll be sure to share all your links and all the resources that you mentioned when we publish this podcast as well. So thanks again. We really appreciate your time. We look forward to continuing to work with you going forward.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Shooting the Shift. Again, you can learn more about American Dairy Association Northeast at americandairy.com and learn how to make some of those dairy cocktails at savorrecipes.com. If you're interested in the work we do to help organizations like ADANE host live engaging virtual field trips, feel free to check us out at virtualfarmtrips.com. As always, we love to hear from you, our listeners. Have a question we can answer for you on a future podcast, want to learn more about our team, or even set up a free 30-minute discovery meeting to learn more about what Shiftology has to offer? Give us a visit at shift-ology.com. On behalf of the entire gang here at Shiftology Communication, I'm Dan Toland saying thanks again, and we hope you'll join us on a future episode of Shooting the Shift.